Okay, hello and good evening everybody. Welcome to this Knowledge Pool video, which is our second session of our introductory series, Introduction to Excel. So our housekeeping rules are as we always have them. We want you to arrive early for all our sessions. Okay. Just bear with me, I'm getting some feedback through my earphones. Why am I getting that? Okay. Right. Tundi, can I just ask? I'm hearing myself coming through my speakers.
You need to close the YouTube on your laptop.
Okay, thank you.
Just close it.
That's why. Yep. Sure. Okay. So I think we're back to how we should be now. Apologies for that delay. This is the first time that I've initiated our streaming to YouTube. So housekeeping rules are as before. We want you to arrive early for the sessions because, as you've seen, we all have technical problems. If you can work in a quiet place. So I am just getting that same feedback because I had another YouTube window open. I think we are there now though. Third time should be a dream. So. Okay. So if you can work in a quiet place and mute your microphone when you're not asking questions, as you've seen, if I get any kind of feedback or noise in my headset, it's extremely difficult to talk and hear that noise at the same time. Take the training seriously. You can review the session recording on YouTube if you're not able to make notes. There is an assignment that's part of this session, and we would ask you to complete the assignments on time because it's very difficult to mark the assignments on time anyway. So if we have assignments coming in late, that just adds to the difficulty. If you do need to leave one of our meetings, if you can, just leave us a message on the chat. If we've got a coordinator that's working on the meeting, the coordinator will see those. We perhaps won't have the coordinator here all evening, so if you put something in the chat, I'll check that before we end the meeting. And buddy up, find somebody that can help you with your training and with your learning. You'll get a lot more out of it if two of you learn together. And you'll get more out of it if you dedicate some time. You will need time for the assignment, but the more time that you dedicate to training, reading around the subject, doing your own investigation, doing practice, the more beneficial the training will become. We'd like you to try to keep questions to the end, but if you're really not understanding something, please say so immediately and ask me the question there and then while we're dealing with the thing that you're not understanding. Okay? So, as I've said, my name is Tony Langdon. The purpose of this session is to consolidate your knowledge of the basic features of Excel. We're really going to look at everything that we looked at in session 1 again to make sure that this key knowledge about what Excel is, how it works, the very basics, you understand them and that you've had the opportunities to ask any questions you need to before we move on to the next topics. So I'm going to show you these basic features of Excel and how you might use them to create a spreadsheet that can be used in a real business situation. And you're going to recreate this spreadsheet as your assignment. And the payoff will be that you'll have consolidated your knowledge of these basic features of Excel, and you'll be confident in using Excel to perform simple calculations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint slides that I've got open at the moment and move to a Word document where I'll introduce the scenario that we're going to look at where we need a spreadsheet that can be used in a real business situation. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing that we have a grid on the screen with some data in it. And what we're looking at here is that the scenario we're working with is that there is a need to forecast the cost of a new project. And the project manager has estimated the number of days work that are required from staff in different roles. And these estimates are split out by the stage of the project as per the table below. So we have 4 different types of resource: project manager, business analyst, software developer, and software tester. And we have 4 stages of the project: initiation, planning, delivery, and close down. And then you can see that the project manager thinks that this project is going to take 11 months to complete. And he's put estimates in for each month, for each resource type, for each stage, but he's left some cells blank where, for example, if we look in April, there's nothing in April that's going to be happening during the initiation stage. The initiation stage is going to be completed by the end of March. So the project manager's left April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November blank for the initiation, and he's moved on to the planning stage in rows 5 through to 8. So in order to forecast the cost of this project, we also need to think about what these days of work are going to cost. And I'm just going to scroll down, because there is a published day rate for each type of resource. So every day that the project manager spends working on the project will be charged at £500. Every day that the business analyst spends working on the project will be charged at £400, and so on with the software developer and the software tester. So in order to calculate how much this project is going to cost, what we need to do is we need to multiply the estimated days that the project manager has estimated by these day rates for each of the different roles, because the rate is different for each role. So the project manager wants a worksheet that will calculate the cost of each type of resource per phase and per month and also the total cost of the project. So we're going to look at how you would create an Excel worksheet to meet these requirements. And as I mentioned, this is a consolidation exercise, so we'll mostly be using what we learned in session 1, but we'll be adding a few simple ideas into your learning so that you can start to see some of the power of Excel. The first thing we need to do is get the data into Excel. And luckily, the data has arrived in a Word document. And so we can cut and paste the data, and I'll show you how we do that. So we'll go back to where the data is. And I'm going to select all of these cells in this Word table. So I've just clicked my mouse in the top left corner and dragged it to the bottom right corner. And now if I press Control C, that's copied that data to the clipboard. Hello.
Can't see anything.
You can't see anything.
I can only see you.
Okay, right. So what I'll do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to start sharing the screen again. Okay, are you seeing a Word document now? Sorry, are you seeing a Word document now? Okay. Can anybody see the Word document that's on the screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, thank you, Remy. Okay, so we'll assume that, hello, yes?
I can see it also.
Good, okay, thank you. Thank you for confirming that. So hopefully everybody will be able to see that. If your internet connection is a little slow, it may take time for the screen to come through. It can take sort of 30 seconds perhaps if your internet connection is very bad, but hopefully now everybody's seeing this table that we have in the Word document. And just in case you didn't see the table of day rates, I will just scroll there again and just show you these are the day rates that we have on the screen at the moment for the different roles. And I'll do that copy step again. So I select in the top left cell and I drag. So I'm dragging with my mouse right the way to the bottom right corner. I press Control C and that's copied that Word table to the clipboard. So now I can go to Excel, and we saw in session 1 that when you start Excel, and I'm going to start Excel by clicking on the Excel icon I have on my taskbar. You'll see that when you start Excel in that way, it offers you the option of creating a new blank workbook. That's in the top left corner of the screen at the moment. And if I click on new blank workbook, we get a blank workbook, as you can see on the screen. So with the data that's in the clipboard, and with cell A1 selected, so you'll see that the cursor is in cell A1 at the moment. Cell A1 is highlighted. If I press Control V, let's try it again. There we go. The data is copied through from Microsoft Word. Okay. So, does this look okay? I guess not. What we need to do is we need to make the columns a little wider to contain all the data. And to do this, what we need to do is move the cursor so that it sits over the intersection or the gap between column A and column B. And if we do that, you should see that the cursor has changed so that it's a vertical bar with two arrows coming out of it, one to the left, one to the right. So when I hold the mouse cursor over the gap between column A and B, I get this different mouse cursor. And if I press down with the mouse left button and I drag the mouse to the right, I can make column A wider. And I can do the same thing with column B. I put the mouse cursor over the gap, the intersection between columns B and C. I click down with the left button, hold it down, drag it to make column B wider. And I can do that with any of the columns. Now, if I select one of the cells, I'm just going to pick a random cell here. I've clicked in cell E5. The cell E5 is at the intersection of column E and row 5. But what you'll notice is that because the bold cell boundaries have been copied through from the Word document, it's actually quite hard to see which cell I have selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this area again, and I've done that in this case just by clicking on the last cell, holding the mouse button down and dragging the mouse up to cell A1 and letting go. So I've now selected all of that data that was copied through from Word. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on that area, and you'll see that I get what's called a context menu. And a context menu shows you what you can do with the data that you have selected. And if we look a long way down this list, somewhere near the bottom, you'll see that one of the options is format cells, this option here. If I click on format cells, I get a dialog where I have some tabs across the top where I can select different sorts of formatting. What's selected at the moment are the different number formats that are selected, but I could click on alignment and select different sorts of alignment. And we saw in session 1 about alignment. All of these options that I have on these tabs also appear on the ribbon bar at the top. So you can see that we have font, alignment, number, styles, and so on. So what I'm going to do for the moment is I'm going to go to the border, and you'll see that we have a preset border called none. We also have two others called outline and inside, but I'm going to click on the preset border none. What that does is it changes the border around all of the selected cells to whatever the preset is. This preset is called none, so the cells are not going to have a border. If I press OK, Excel will make that change, and you can see that all the bold borders have now disappeared. And now when I click on a particular cell, it's now much easier to see which cell it is I'm clicking on and referring to. So as I say, all of these formats that we saw when we looked at the format cells, they are available on the ribbon bar. But by selecting this entire area, clicking on format cells, and then making the changes I want to make, I can make those changes to many cells at once. The same process does work with the ribbon bar, but I wanted to show you the context menu as well. And there are other options on that context menu as to what you could do with the selected data. Okay, so let's use our imagination a little now and assume that the project might run over. Such things happen in business. So we're going to create a new column for December in case we need to put some data into that column. So I'm going to show you how you would copy a column. And the way you do this is to select a column, and we're going to copy the column which has the data for November in it. So that's column M. And to select the entire column, you hold your mouse cursor over the column name, and you'll see that we get a down arrow as the mouse cursor. If I click there, that's now selected everything in column M. And what I can do here, I've got two ways that I can copy. I can either press Control-C, which is a standard thing in Microsoft products for copying. So we could press Control-C. I've done that. The other thing we could do is we could right-click on the column, and you'll see on this context menu that right at the top, we have some options, one of which is copy. So I could click copy here. Pressing Control-C or right-clicking and clicking on copy both do the same thing. They make a copy of that column and put it in the clipboard. If I want to now copy that into the next column along, I would click on cell N1, and I can either press Control-V, or I can right-click and I can click one of these paste options. So the first option that we can click on in the paste options is a standard paste. It's just the standard paste. And it's this option here, the first one in this list. These other options paste in slightly different ways, but for the moment, we're just going to paste using the standard method. And you'll see that what we've got now in column N is a copy of what was in column M, because we've copied and pasted. Okay. And what we can do now is we can click in cell N1, and we can change the text that's there to say DEC, being short for December. And what we'll do, because our copy has brought this data over, we're going to delete this data because we don't currently know that the project is going to overrun. We're adding this column in case it does. So what I would do to delete that data is to select cell N14, and I can hold down the Shift key and click on cell N17, and that will select everything between cell N14 and N17. So that's selected the data we want to delete, and all I need to do to delete it is just press the delete key, which I've done now. So that's our extended spreadsheet. But at the moment, all we've got is a table for the estimated effort for this project. We now need to multiply every estimate by the day rate for the resource. So I think the first thing we should do is to create a column where we can store the day rates for each type of resource. And we're going to do that the same way we created the column for December. So I'm going to click on the column M, and I'm going to right click and press copy. I'm going to put the cursor into cell O1. I'm going to right click and select the standard paste option. And so we get a copy of column M again. But here, what we're going to do is change the column heading to say day rate, and press the enter key to enter that. And you'll see that this column is currently not quite wide enough to hold that text. So we'll make this column wider as we did previously. So we hold the cursor over the point between column O and column P, we see the cursors change to this vertical bar with the 2 outward pointing arrows. I press down with the mouse key and hold it down and then drag it to the right to make that column bigger. And then we also need to get rid of this data down here. So we can click on cell O14, hold down the shift key, click on cell O17 to select all of the data and press the delete key to get rid of it. So what we need to do now is we need to put the day rate in for each type of resource. And to make the formulas that we're going to write easier to write, we can copy the data from cells 02 to 05 into cells 06 through rate was £500. So we'll put that in with its pound sign. But remember, when we looked at this in session 1, we learned that the actual data in the cell, the number format on the ribbon bar, this area here, this currently says currency. If I click in one of the other cells, it says general, but when I click here, it says currency. And that shows me that Excel has set a currency format for me automatically just by me entering a pound sign at the start of the data that I'm entering. Remember, the actual data in the cell is just the number 500, and we can see that on the formula bar here. Remember, in session 1, we said that Excel cells can only hold data, which can be a number or some text, and they can also hold a formula. This cell, cell 02, currently only has one item of data in it, and that is the number 500. So that's the day rate for project managers. The day rate for business analysts was £400. The day rate for software developers was 600, and the day rate for software testers was also 400. So they're the day rates that we need. Having entered those day rates on those first 4 rows, what we can do is we can select those cells, and I'm going to select them as I selected the cells to be deleted by clicking on the first cell. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click on the last cell I want. So I've now got those 4 cells. I'm going to right click on them and click copy. And then if I click in this cell here, cell 06, and right click and click the standard paste option, I get a copy of that data. And I'm going to repeat that. All I have to do, because I've got the data in the clipboard, is I just have to do the paste option now to paste that data in. So I've now got all the day rates that we need in order to do a calculation. Now we need somewhere where we can calculate the cost of the resource, which we would do by multiplying the estimates by the day rates. So we could do this in some rows below. So we could go down the page, or we could use the columns to the right. It doesn't really matter, it's a choice that we make when we're working with Excel. But so that you can follow me, we're going to work in the columns to the right of the day rate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first select the cells C1 through to N17. So that's basically C1, and if I hold the shift key down and click on cell N17, I've selected all of the estimates for all of the months, January to December. And you'll notice that copying in this way, we're also copying the column headings, these names that we've given for the months. So I need to do a right click with the mouse. I need to press copy. That's copied that data to the clipboard. And I'm now going to scroll using the scroll bar at the bottom over. I'm going to click in cell P1 and right click and select the standard paste option. And you'll see that what we get is a copy of the estimates. But of course, these estimates here are not the data we want. We want to perform a calculation that takes an estimate and multiplies it by the appropriate day rate. So what we will do is we'll get rid of this data that's currently incorrect. We'll do that, excuse me, by clicking on cell P2, holding the Shift key down and clicking on cell Z17. That's selected all the data. We then press the delete key, that gets rid of all the data. So we now have an empty space where we can put our formulas that we need to calculate the cost of the project. So with the cursor in cell P2, we need to start entering a formula to calculate the cost of the work that's going to be done by the project manager in January. So we mentioned in session 1 that to write a formula, you always start with an equal sign. And the formula to calculate the cost of the work done by the project manager the formula to calculate the cost of the work done by the project manager in January is going to be the day rate multiplied by, and we use the star sign to tell Excel we're doing a multiplication, and we're going to have to scroll over and we can click then on cell C10. You'll see that C10 is not the correct cell. I'm saying C10 because I can see the number 10 in the cell I mean cell 2, this cell here. So you can see that our formula on the formula bar has been completed for us by Excel when I've clicked on cell C2. It's completed the formula as being equals O2 times by C2. And if you just look at the screen, you can see what that formula is doing. It's taking the day rate in cell O2 and it's multiplying it by the number of days that have been estimated for project manager resource during the initiation stage during the month of January. So if I now press the enter key, formula will be entered into cell P2. And you can see that it's calculated the cost of this project manager resource correctly. It said, well, if the project manager is going to do 10 days and his day rate is £500, then the cost of that work is £5,000. And I would mention at this point, for people that perhaps haven't worked on projects in business at all, these day rates are actually quite typical of the cost of project resource. These are not what people are paid, but these are what people cost to have working in the business. So this is calculated as a cost for the project manager. Now, what we can do now is, having calculated that cost for the project manager, we can select cell P2 and we can copy that formula to the rest of the cells in column P where we need them. And Excel is quite clever, because what Excel will do it will adjust the formula so that it's correct for every row. And I'll show you that working. So I've got cell P2 selected at the moment. I'm going to right click on it and select copy. And I'm going to then select cell P3 by clicking on it. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click on cell P17. So I've now got all of the cells selected. And if I right click and click the standard paste option, Excel has copied the formulas. But has it done it correctly? Let's take a look. So we will click on cell P3 and you'll see that in cell P3, Excel has changed the formula to say O3 times C3. So it's taking the day rate in cell O3 and multiplying it by the estimate of the number of days in cell C3 to get a figure for the cost of the business analyst work during January for initiation. But it doesn't seem to have done the right thing, or has it, for the other months. And in fact, it has done the right thing. If we look at these formulas, so if we look at cell P4, we can see that the formula is O4 multiplied by C4. So that's the day rate in O4, which is £600, multiplied by the estimate of days in C4. Now the estimate is 0, so of course the answer is 0. And if we look at any of these cells, and we'll check the bottom one to make sure as well. So Excel has copied these formulas correctly all the way down column P. If we look at this formula in detail, we can see that the formula is cell O17, which is the day rate for a software tester of £400, and it's been multiplied by the number of days in January. And the project manager hasn't put anything for the software tester during the close down phase in January, so the correct answer is 0. So Excel has copied those formulas correctly. Having copied these formulas, it would be nice to be able to then copy January's formulas from column P to column Q and R and so on. I will try that, but we will see that there is a problem. So what I'll do is I will select the first cell we want to copy, P2. I'll hold down the shift key and select the last cell we want to copy, cell P17. I'll right click and select copy. I'm going to click in cell Q2. That's the first cell we want to copy to. If I now scroll to the right and click on cell AA2 whilst holding down the shift key, I select all of those cells. And if I now copy, we'll see what we get. So I'm going to paste using the standard paste option. So we've pasted those formulas from cells P2 through P17 to all these other cells. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just talk about the hash signs that we can see in the column for March. If the data and its format can't be shown correctly by Excel because the column is too narrow, Excel will put hash signs in the space that it does have, and that's what it's done in column March. So what we have to do to see that data and the format is to click on the space between column R and column S So we click down with the mouse, we hold the mouse button down, we drag the mouse to the right to make that column wider, and we can see that that's made that column wider. So we can now see the data. So if we think about what the correct answer should be for the cost of the project manager in February, the correct formula would be £500 multiplied by the number of days that the project manager is going to work in February. And £500 times by 20 should be £10,000. But what we actually have here is the answer is £100,000. So something has gone wrong. And so we need to look at the formula to understand what has actually gone wrong here. And the formula is shown on the formula bar. And if we look at this, you can see that the formula that is now in cell Q2 is this formula that we have on the formula bar. It equals P2 multiplied by D2. So that's taking the estimate of the number of days for the project manager in February, which is D2, that's correct. And it's multiplying it by P2. But P2 is the cost of the project manager in January. And that's just not correct. The formula should be multiplying the estimate of the number of days in February, D2, by the day rate, which is O2. So Excel has slightly messed up for us here. And we'll go on in a subsequent session to see how you stop Excel making this mistake. It makes it for a very reasonable and sensible reason. And we'll learn in session 3 more about how Excel copies and amends formulas when you copy formulas from one cell to another. What we'll just say for the moment is that what Excel has done here is slightly wrong and we need to make a change. The change we need to make, and we'll look at why we need to make this change in more detail in session 3, but just for the moment, I'll show you the change we need to make. I'm going to come back to cell P2, and I'm going to put a $sign at just in front of the letter O in the formula. So I'm going to put a $sign there. And I'm going to press the Enter key to enter that. And you'll see that having made that change, that hasn't changed the calculation answer that Excel has calculated for us. So I can, if I want to, I can undo that change using the undo button, which is in the very top left corner of the screen. It's an arrow that's sort of turning back on itself. If I click on the undo button, that $sign is removed from the formula. You can see that in the formula bar now. But if you look at the value that we have in P2, in cell P2, it's £5,000. If I make that same change again, I'll use the redo button up here in the top left corner. The formula's changed. I've put a $sign in front of the O, but the answer is still £5,000. So the $sign isn't actually affecting the calculation. What the $sign does is it tells Excel how to change the formula if we copy it. And it's basically saying, don't change this. You can change anything else. You can change the row numbers. You can change the column numbers, but don't change the O. So now what happens when we copy is, if I want to copy cell P2 to column Q and to cell Q2, I'll show you what happens, because this is the fix for our problem that we've got with Excel not adjusting the formulas correctly when it copies them. So I'll show you the copy step first. So I'm going to just click somewhere else, just anywhere randomly. Then I'm going to click back on cell P2, and you'll see we have our formula with the $ in front of the O. I'm going to right click on the cell, select copy. I'm going to click on the cell I want to copy to, which is cell Q2, and I'm going to right click and click the standard paste thing. Now we have the right answer. And if we look at the formula that we have in in cell Q2, you'll see that it is in fact the correct formula. I'm going to click just randomly anywhere, and I'm going to come back to cell Q2 so we can look at this formula and see the cell that I'm talking about. So we copied from cell P2 to Q2. And if you look at the formula that we now have, you can see that we still have the O there with the $ in front of it. So this time when we've copied, because we put the $ in front of the O, Excel hasn't changed that when it's done the copy, it's left it as O. And what that means is that the formula is correct. So the formula to calculate the cost of the days that the project manager is going to work in February is the day rate, which is in cell O2, multiplied by the number of days in February that the project manager is going to work, which is in D2. So again, if we come back to cell Q2 and we look at the formula, that formula is now correct. And so to finish this spreadsheet off, what we need to do is we need to copy the correct formula that is in cell P2, and we need to copy it to all of these other cells where we wanted to calculate the cost of the project. So I'll just show me doing that slowly so that you can follow it. So I've selected cell P2 again. I right click on it and select copy. So I now have it in the clipboard. I select all the cells that I want to copy to, and I'm going to select cell A17 to start with. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to select cell P2. And I'm going to paste into that selected area. And if you've been paying attention, you will notice that I'm copying from a cell, P2, and I'm copying back to that cell. And Excel allows you to do that because it's convenient. Because Excel is good at working with tables of data, it's very useful to be able to select a square table time and time again. And if we couldn't select and paste into cell P2, we would have to do the pasting in 2 stages. So Excel is kind and lets us select the cell that we're copying from as a cell that we're copying to, because that allows us to select a square area to copy. So I'm ready now to paste these formulas into all of these cells. So I right click, I click on the standard paste option, and there we have all the correct formulas pasted. And you'll see that our costs and where we have values mirrors where we have days in the estimate. So for example, if we look in column S through to U, we have values or costs for 4 different resources working in those 3 months. And if we look over to the left-hand side, you'll see we've got an estimate for 4 resources in April, May, and June. And again, if we want to spot check any of these formulas, let's check the formula for September for the project manager, for the delivery stage. And I've just noticed that I don't have the month of September correctly abbreviated. So I'll just change that by typing September or an abbreviation for September into both of those column headings, and then we'll look at this formula. So the formula that's been copied says take the value of cell 010, which is the day rate for the project manager of £500, and multiply it by the estimate that we have on that row for September. And so that does give us the correct answer. 20 days multiplied by £500 is £10,000. Excuse me, I just need to take a drink of water. Okay, sorry about that. So by making that small change to the formula in cell P2, we've now been able to copy that formula to all the other cells in order to calculate the cost of the project. But we do need to add up that cost, and Excel can help us to do that. So let's add a column to contain the total cost for each resource. And so we'll start by selecting column AA by clicking on the column name AA. That selected the whole column. I'm going to right click and click copy, put my cursor into cell AB1, right click and click paste special. So we've now got a column, but the column doesn't have the right heading. Let's change that. We'll put total into the column heading. And of course, we need to make sure the formula is correct. Now, to calculate the total, we could add up all 12 months individually. We could write a formula that says something like this. We could say P2 plus Q2 plus R2 plus S2 and so on. We could keep going until we get to the column AA. But Excel gives us a quicker, better way of doing that. And the way to do it is to use a formula, and to within the formula to use a function. And we're going to use a function called sum. I'm going to start writing the sum function by typing the word sum. I then need an open bracket, and I then need the first cell where I want the sum operation to start. So I'm going to click on cell P2. We then need to provide a colon. This is Excel's standard for defining a range. And you'll see that what Excel has done at the moment is it's put cell P2 as being the range. For the moment, I'm just going to finish this function off by putting the close bracket and press the enter key to enter that formula. And then I'm going to select cell AB2 so we can have a look at the formula we've written. Okay, so the formula we've written says equals sum of P2 colon P2. And what that means to Excel is I want you to add up everything between cells P2 and cell P2. Now, of course, if the second value is P2, that's just one value. So that's just pulling the value of P2 into column AB. That's not what we need. What we need to do is amend this formula here. So rather than saying P2 as being the second value, we say AA2. And what that means is we're now adding up all of the values between P2 and AA2. And if I press the enter key now, we'll see that that total correctly calculates. And we can check that. We can see that if we add up January's figure, February's figure, March's figure, and all of these zeros, we should get £25,000, and we do. So this is a formula that we've written using a function that is built into Excel called sum that will add up all of the values between two cells. And sum is a very useful function. It gets used a lot with Excel. Now, we've got our correct total for row 2, but all the other totals are still wrong. What we need to do is we need to copy this formula from cell AB2 to all the other cells in column AB. So what I'm going to do is, as we've been doing through the session, I'm going to right click on the cell I want to copy, click copy, select the first cell I want to copy to, which is AB3, hold down the shift key, click on the last cell I want to copy to, which is AB17, right click and click on the standard paste option. You can press Control V if you want, does exactly the same thing as the standard paste option, and it is perhaps quicker in some cases to do that. And having done that, you'll now see that we have all the totals correct. And we can spot check some of these if we want. If we wanted to, for example, look at row 10, we could see that the total for row 10 should be 40,000, and it is 40,000. So these formulas that we've written in cell in column AB are now correct. But this doesn't tell us the total cost for the whole project. What we need to do to get the cost for the whole project is add up all of these values. And again, we'll use the sum function to do that for us. So I'm going to click in cell AB18. I'm going to start writing a formula. So we use the equal sign. We then need to write the function we're going to use, sum. We need an open bracket. We need to tell Excel the first cell that we want to start the sum operation. We then need a colon because we're going to do a range. And what I did previously was I finished the formula off with the bracket to end the sum function and press the enter key. At the moment, we're just summing AB2 through to AB2. So we're just getting the value from the one cell AB2. So we need to change AB2 to say AB17. And you'll see that Excel helpfully shows us what that range is. It's highlighted it with a blue box around it. And if I press the enter key now, you'll see that we get a total cost for the project. And given that these are realistic day rates, this is not an unrealistic cost for a project that might take half a year to deliver. This project is going to cost the business over £400,000, and that's not unusual. But it's always a good idea when you're working with Excel to always think, are the answers that Excel is calculating, are they correct? Do they look to be in the right area, the right size? Because as you've seen, Excel can make mistakes. When we copied the formula from cell P2 to the other columns, Excel tried to help us out by adjusting the formulas, but because it didn't really understand that the day rate only appeared in column O, when it adjusted the formulas, it didn't do so quite correctly. And we had to put a $ in front of the O to tell Excel not to change the O when it copied those formulas. And if we just review, if we just look in one of these cells, we'll see that column O is always column O. Excel doesn't change the O because we put a $sign at the start of it. And as I said, we will look in session 3 about how Excel changes formulas when you copy them and how we use the $sign. We'll look at that in more detail. But for the moment, this is more or less the end of our exercise. We have a calculation now that meets the project manager's requirement, which was to know the cost for each resource and the cost for each and a total cost for the project. Actually, if we go back to what the scenario was, the project manager wanted to know what the cost for each resource for each phase of the project was, and that's what we have in rows 2 to 17, and then we have our total in row 18. Again, as revision, if we want to put the same color in cell AB18 as we have everywhere else, I'll just show how we do that. We can do that on the font ribbon bar. We select the fill color and we just pick the same color that we have everywhere else. And now the spreadsheet looks more standard and neater. So we can see that our total figure is there. The final thing we should do is we need to save the spreadsheet. And so I'm going to save it exactly as we'll ask you to save this spreadsheet when you complete the assignment. So I'm going to do a file save as. I'm going to just pick somewhere where I can save it. I'm going to save it into my documents, and I'm going to call this Excel 2 and my name. And that's how we'll ask you to save this worksheet when you do your assignment. Okay. So that's our finished spreadsheet. So what I'll do now is, can I just, yeah, sure, go ahead. So does somebody need to ask a question? Okay. If you need to ask a question, come off mute and then I will be able to hear your question and answer it. Okay. Just while we do that, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and go back to the PowerPoint presentation briefly. Okay. So what I'd like you to do for your assignment is to recreate the spreadsheet that we saw being created in this session. We'll send you detailed instructions of how to complete the assignment. So don't worry that you'll struggle with it, because you'll have detailed instructions that will tell you everything you need to do. You can also look back at the recording on YouTube if you think that will help. As we've said, we'd like you to save the workbook as a file called Excel 2 and then put your name after a dash. The assignment's going to be due on the 17th of August. If you can get it into me by 6 p.m, that would be great. And what you'll need to do is share your assignment with admin@knowledgepool.co.uk from your Google Drive. And we'll send you out instructions on how to do that separately via Telegram. So you'll get your instructions on how to complete the assignment and how to hand it in via Telegram. So check on Telegram shortly and it will be there for you to do. Okay. Hello. Okay. Okay. Can I just ask something? So if Taewoo trying to ask a question, it's just I'm hearing something, but it's very, very faint. If there's somebody on this session called Taewoo who's trying to ask a question, your voice is very, very, very quiet. You might need to adjust your microphone, perhaps try to get your mouth more closer to it. And just make sure that you're unmuted as well. If anybody else needs to ask a question about the assignment or anything else that we've done tonight, now would be a good time to do that. But we'll perhaps just give Taewoo a moment just to try and get their microphone working better. And as we've reached the end of the session, I'm going to stop the recording now and stop the stream to YouTube. Apologies for the delay getting started. As I say, it's the first time that I was actually in a position to stream us to YouTube, and we did have that problem, which luckily Yetunde was able to tell us about. Okay, so we've given Taewoo the opportunity to ask a question. Is there anybody else that has a question about what we've seen today? I can go back to Excel and to our scenario to look at anything that you need to ask about if you want me to do so. Okay, if that's okay, then I will end the session there. I'll put the assignment instructions and instructions on how to deliver your assignment to us for marking up onto Telegram, and I'll also put the date that the assignment's due there as well. So thank you very much for your attention this evening. I hope that's been useful. As we said in the housekeeping, the more practice you do, the better you will get. So do complete the assignment and we'll give you feedback on it if you seem to have had problems with it. If you do need help, ask for help on Telegram and we'll try to help you that way. Okay, so have a good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. Bye for now. And I will end the session there for us all.